If you didn't know the dead woman, you couldn't know I'd be there.
Finding you, that was good luck. Finding them, only have to think.
You're linked. But it's your own link.
With the announcement trailer of Cyberpunk 2077 starring Keanu Reeves at the 2019 E3, everyone's kind of got back into the cyberpunk thing. So I thought we would have a look at a cyberpunk movie from 2004. This one is called Cyber Wars. It's also known as Matrix Hunter, also known as Avatar. And this one is actually, I think it was filmed in Singapore, and is directed by Jin Hong Kao, and stars Genevieve O'Reilly as our protagonist, Dash Mackenzie. Now, Dash Mackenzie is known as a headhunter, which is essentially a bounty hunter in this futuristic landscape. And interestingly, obviously this is a 2004 film, so it has this kind of future tech, and you know, it's one of those films where the stuff that they're doing in the film is actually kind of around today. They have like these kind of Alexa things where people like to, you know, talk, and the program picks it up, things like that. There's a few kind of little bits of tech, and there's a lot that isn't, but a few bits of tech which is kind of in the movie that is kind of more or less kind of here today. Anyway, she is hired by this big corporation to track down this guy who's gone missing. This guy's got some kind of corporate secrets that this company want back, and Dash Mackenzie is kind of in competition with the police to try and find this guy, and seemingly everyone wants to get hold of this guy. So obviously the information that he's got is clearly very valuable. And as she kind of, you know, as the investigation continues, she finds out that it might run deeper than anyone initially anticipated, leading in murder, violence, espionage. It's all there. So let's talk Cyber Wars, aka Matrix Hunter, aka Avatar. So it's a kind of $2.5 million budget movie. So it's low budget, but it does have some kind of budget for kind of special effects and things like that. And I've got to say, this kind of reminds me of like the kind of the 90s TV show, the kind of the aesthetic of it. But there is a fair amount of world building here. We see kind of lots of kind of like virtual reality things. I mean, some of them don't seem particularly practical. There's a scene at the beginning of the movie where we have this wedding and people are kind of attending virtually, so to speak. But then they're sat just outside in the car. Seems kind of pointless. But there's lots of kind of like fun little things that this kind of world that possesses, and there's people with, you know, cybernetic, you know, enhancements, things like this. So the world building isn't too bad, I've got to say, and obviously a lot of this taking place in a kind of Matrix style kind of virtual reality. You can forgive some of the kind of the early 2000s kind of CGI to a certain degree, but obviously it does look like early 2000s CGI. So bear that in mind with a budget. So let's discuss what works first of all. So our central character, played by Genevieve O'Reilly, I've got to say is a likeable character. I kind of quite liked her roguish attitude, which is more often than not kind of reserved for kind of like male protagonists, kind of like an Indiana Jones thing. So it was nice to see a kind of a female protagonist that doesn't go around kind of trying to look sexy and stuff, but she kind of looks like a little bit of a kind of, you know, a bit of a rough and tumble rogue type character. So I actually quite liked her. It makes her quite kind of endearing and quite kind of likeable. I do have some issues with her character though. We'll come on to that in the negative section. So that's quite good. I quite like the world building as discussed. There are kind of quite a lot of little neat touches here and there that just kind of like give you kind of this sense of the world that this kind of movie inhabits. And you know, there's kind of a little fun little things here and there to kind of enjoy for a kind of a future tech and kind of that sort of stuff. The plot tries to have kind of a few twists and turns as it kind of goes along, and there are a couple of recognisable faces here as well. David Warner is the head of one corporation. You've got Joan Chen, you may know from Twin Peaks, and one of my favourite movies, The Hunted. She's like the head of another corporation. And then we kind of get into this whole kind of like corporate kind of war thing, and that's very much in the kind of the vein of the like the official sort of cyberpunk game, these kind of corporate wars and stuff like that, and that's what the kind of the power is now in this kind of world of the corporate kind of infrastructures and things like that. So that's all kind of quite sort of, although this isn't officially a cyberpunk movie, it is kind of quite indicative of that kind of that sort of subgenre, so to speak. Now, cyberpunk originally was actually a role-playing game, but that kind of the term has been coined to kind of like used to describe a genre now, things like Blade Runner, I guess. And it does have a similar low-budget, admittedly, look to kind of like for Blade Runner. What doesn't work for me, going back to kind of like the main character here, Dash Mackenzie, her character seems somewhat incompetent. Now, she is touted to be the best, you know, bounty hunter that there is. But we have like a kind of almost like a James Bond sort of style section at the beginning, kind of to sort of showcase what she does. But she comes across as just having to, you know, lucked into what her kind of kind of man that she captures, and the way she kind of goes about it, she seems very kind of slapdash, and she seems somewhat incompetent, I have to say. And even throughout the movie, there's a couple of flubs that she makes. I mean, you could see that as she's kind of like a flawed personality, but you know, she's meant to have this like great reputation of being this fantastic bounty hunter. We don't really see that, because quite often than not, she'll kind of seem to just kind of like luck into things, or and kind of make a hash of them other times. So there's that. The plot, although it does try to have some simplistic sort of plot twists, it is a fairly kind of basic plot, and you can kind of see the writing on the wall pretty easily. The kind of I don't even want to call it a twist. The reveal here is fairly kind of obvious that, oh my god, the corporation's on the up and up. Oh my god. You know, so it doesn't take any type of sophistication in regards to its kind of, you know, its storytelling here. It's very kind of a basic. The acting as well, I've got to say, is kind of a mixed bag. It's not cringe-worthy bad, but there are some kind of like quite horrible line deliveries here. Obviously, you've got your genre greats like David Warner kind of do this stuff for breakfast, but even unfortunately, Genevieve O'Reilly, I don't think puts in a particularly believable performance. I liked her character, but I felt like I don't know if I quite was buying her acting a lot of the time. And yeah, I mean, so some of the kind of the effects work better than others, and some of them just seem kind of unnecessary to a certain degree. And there are some kind of like cheesy kind of dialogue, cheesy kind of tropes that you'll see. And when it comes down to it, it's a fairly kind of like basic humdrum, lowish budget science fiction movie. Certainly not bad. If you are a cyberpunk enthusiast and you just want to have more material to watch, because let's be honest, there isn't loads, to be honest. It's one of these genres which is fairly sparse. It might be worth a watch, but don't be expecting to kind of like really remember this one. I was reminded of Virtual Revolution, one which I reviewed a little while ago, that I thoroughly enjoyed, and that was a low budget movie, and that was extremely good. This one is kind of average, so I'll give this one a 5 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.